is up, everyone? Welcome to the Awesemo MMA Strategy Show, as we are here to get you ready for UFC Vegas number 29, which is on Saturday afternoon there in Las Vegas. We got a lock time of 4 p.m. Eastern time, and of course, main card will be 7 p.m. Eastern time, headlined by the Korean Zombie, taking on Dan Ige. Of course, as always, I am joined by the fighter, Pete Rogers Jr. Good evening, Pete. How you doing, brother?
What is up? What's going on, everybody? Thank you for joining us today. I hope you guys killed it last week. It was an awesome card. This week, this card is it's a little underwhelming compared to last week, but it's fights, and we're here to help you guys make some money and break it down for you.
It would have been a really great weekend for me if Jamal Hill would have won. I would tell you, but unfortunately, look, if you listen to what I said last week, I told you what concerned me about Jamal Hill was if the fight went to the ground, goes to the ground. And I guess if we want to say anything about Jamal Hill going forward, the guy's arm can be dislocated. He's still going to be trying to knock out his opponent.
Yeah, right. Yeah, I mean, you called it saying that Paul Craig was the ultimate boom bust guy. I mean, I didn't really foresee that happening because, we saw Jamal Hill kind of get out of the position and then go back into the position, which is like a fight IQ issue. Going forward, you're going to have to, maybe temper some expectations, regarding certain matchups and whatnot. But all in all, it was a great card. I mean, happy for Brandon Moreno coming through and capturing the belt. That was pretty damn awesome. I like it when great moments and great accomplishments happen to good people. And I thought that was just the story of the night. I think Brandon Moreno kind of stole the show.
Yeah, a mural went up on Sunday morning there in Tijuana. I'm sure a lot of people have seen that. There was a small little time-lapse video. And actually the same artist actually did a mural of him prior to the fight as well, and said that another one will be going up when he won the title there. Just a great moment there. And of course, Izzy goes out there and does what he does. And Pete, that's a prime example of a fighter not listening to his corners. Every time he came back, you lost that round, you lost that round, you lost that round. And then he's just magically baffled when the score is 50-45.
Yeah, quite delusional. Now, I was at work, right? And, I ended up purchasing the pay-per-view on my phone. So some people started noticing I was watching, and they started forming a crowd. I'm like, guys, get the heck out of here. You're going to blow my cover. I'm trying to watch the fights in peace while I'm supposed to be working. And then probably 25 minutes after purchasing the pay-per-view, my phone just completely shut down. So I was in the dark with the rest of the card. I couldn't even check Twitter. I didn't even know what the heck was going on. I was asking some of my close friends at work, I'm like, hey, let me borrow your phone. Let me go on SureDog. And I was trying to keep up with the fights that way. But I missed out, and I ended up watching some of the fights the day after. But it was an excellent card. You always think that maybe in a rematch things will be different, and they weren't really much different. I mean, they both fighters have evolved, but clearly Israel Adesanya still has a gap between him and Marvin Vettori. We'll have to see, as far as, Chito Vera against Davey Grant in a rematch this week, who has evolved, who has maybe taken a step back, or if things will be different this time around. But I am excited to break down the card with you, and especially for, our audience, and, always appreciative to have you guys join us.
Of course, be sure to hit that thumbs up button right here on YouTube. If you're not subscribed to the channel, you got to do that. We got a lot of great programming for you. Of course, right before us was Lawfully and Adam getting you ready for tonight's NBA action. Of course, we always have free premium tools and data over at awesemo.com. If you're not a member, you want to get a little peek behind what's behind the paywall today. The free premium tools and data has been NBA Big Board, MLB Top Stacks, and PGA golfer rankings. So that's a great thing you can check out there. But Pete, let's get right into this one. UFC Vegas number 29 main event, the Korean Zombie taking on Dan Ige, your favorite salary of the night. 8,200 for the Zombie, 8,000 for Dan Ige. Dan Ige is now the betting favorite in this one, a minus 135 betting favorite, plus 115 for the zombie. If you wanted to be a Dan Ige backer, you've already missed out on the best line. That line was there. I remember I looked right after the fights on Sunday, and this was a straight up pick of -110 on both sides. So I will say this: I think if you want to be a Korean zombie backer from a betting perspective, I think you just wait till the last minute, because I think that potentially that line is going to get better for you. I'll tell you this: one of the things I've really noticed, a lot of sharp minds are on Dan Ige in this one, but you're kind of looking at it from the other side.
Yeah, I'm interested with this main event, and I'm happy that the salaries are kind of, reflecting my struggle with it as well. They understand it's a close fight, and they understand that, this is an important matchup for the division. I was expecting the odds to be a little bit different, but I do think that, Chansung Jung coming in at 8,200, especially because of his UFC experience and his strength of schedule, if you will, within the UFC, I think it kind of speaks, for itself that he should be the favorite, or started out as the favorite. And now a lot of money has been coming in on Dan Ige, but this could be a case of recency bias. And how often do we see recency bias really reflect on Vegas odds or on the public's money, where they start hammering certain lines because of one poor performance? Now, one poor performance isn't the steady, going forward. It's not going to be just the constant moving forward. And, I understand that Chansung Jung was a little bit underwhelming against Brian Ortega, but is it more about him looking bad in that matchup, or Brian Ortega really excelling and kind of just exceeding expectations and making some necessary adjustments to his boxing game and just having a complete game to really take Chansung Jung out of it? You have to also think that was an emotional fight for both fighters. I know that there was some legitimate beef at one point between Ortega and Chansung Jung, but I mean, if we take all that, out and we really just look at the stylistic matchup, I think that it's an interesting fight because Chansung Jung has fought the tougher competition. Obviously, we are always worried about how much damage he has taken across his career, and when will that damage eventually, catch up to him. You think about the George Roop fight, about how when he has lost, you even think about the last second knockout loss to Yair Rodriguez, the Jose Aldo injury and loss. So there are genuine concerns regarding Chansung Jung's durability, but if you're unable to put his lights out, he will continue to walk you down. I mean, I feel like him being a part of Fight Ready is amazing. I do like his connection with Eddie Cha, and I want to see him in the cage, and I want to see this connection start to unfold and show all the work, under the bright lights, because I do think that Eddie Cha is one of the most underrated coaches out there. I mean, I think if you're in the know, you know who Eddie Cha is, but I think the general public doesn't know who he is. So for me, I do like Chansung Jung in the fight. I think it's a close fight. I think Chansung Jung has some underrated grappling to make things interesting. Obviously, Dan Ige can look to resort to takedowns to solidify rounds, but I think it could be a little bit difficult. I understand Chansung Jung's takedown defense was a little shoddy against Ortega, but man, I don't know. I'm liking Chansung Jung as this underdog, or possibly at low ownership where everybody's going to be flocking to Dan Ige.
Yeah, I mean, I think here is kind of my concerns. I am concerned about being 34 years old, the amount of wear and tear that Chansung Jung has gone throughout the years. If Dan Ige does go the takedown route, in terms of DFS, I think that this is a fight to prioritize because of the salary on DraftKings. I don't think I'm prioritizing this fight over on Fanduel. It's just because of the price point over there. $19 for Ige, $18 for Chansung Jung. One of the things of Dan Ige has shown toughness, but and this is a fight that he's talked about that he wants this to propel him into that top 5 conversation. And to me, I think when you look at the 145-pound division, there's tiers of this. And I think that you look at the top tier being Volk, Holloway, Ortega, that next tier being Zombie, Cater, Zabit, and then that third tier is when you start getting into Dan Ige and the rest of this division. So it's a big opportunity for Dan Ige. First fight for Dan Ige since having a child. So how much that's going to kind of play a role into it. He noted that he had to have a conversation with his wife about the fact of when he got this fight offer of like, hey, yeah, I would be in training camp during the first 2 months of our baby's life. Are you okay with this? She was okay with it. And then on the zombie side, what I found really interesting was he was asking for a 3-round fight here. He was tired of these 5-round fights. So I think Zombie is more, I would say, the GPP play, or I think Dan Ige, I prefer him in cash over GPP.
Yeah, I'm interested to see this, fight unfold. I think that if you look back, when Chansung Jung has had success, it's when he's able to hurt his opponents on the feet. And when he does connect, he does hurt his opponents. So, I mean, you think about the knockout over Frankie Edgar, Renato Moicano, Dennis Bermudez, even back, if we think this is sometime, because my goodness, Chansung Jung had to, served some time in the military, so that he had a long absence away from the cage in the octagon, then an eventual return. So he hasn't been in the cage as much as you want. But even going back to 2012, you think about his, submission win over Dustin Poirier, which is fantastic. When, Mark Hominick came in there after losing his coach and was just completely so emotional and ran into a right hand and got finished within, 10 seconds or something crazy like that. I just think that Chansung Jung has that, that death touch where if he does connect, he can put your lights away. He puts, combinations together. Excellent. He is not the defensively sound fighter in this matchup. It's definitely Dan Ige, but I think his presence and just overall toughness can be tough. It can be difficult to deal with. So I am favoring Chansung Jung. I think the volume will be there. And I think that he's a level above Dan Ige, but as far as like GPPs and lineup construction, you can't avoid Dan Ige. I mean, his salary, I always say prioritize main event and co-main event underdogs. He's in a great spot here, even at 8,000. So he could definitely come through. But for me, a little contrarian in my approach, I like Chansung Jung.
Now, if there's ever a time that you're unable to watch us right here live on YouTube or after the fact, you can catch us a part of the Awesemo Podcast Network, and be sure to submit a 5-star rating or review with your Twitter handle or Awesemo username. You'll be entered to win a free month of Awesemo Plus Platinum. One lucky winner will be awarded every Friday. Reviews are eligible for up to 1 year, and this is your best chance out there to win a free month of Awesemo Plus. So go to awesemo.com/podcast to get your favorite podcasts, as all of our strategy shows are a part of the Awesemo Podcast Network, whether it's MMA, NBA, NASCAR, which I'm a part of. Be sure to check that out over at awesemo.com/podcast. Now, our co-main event of the evening will be a heavyweight matchup, as we've got Aleksei Oleinik, a plus 185 betting underdog, taking on Serghei Spivac, who is minus 225. Looking over the DraftKings side of this equation, Serghei Spivac is 9,200, 7,000 for Aleksei Oleinik. And Pete, look, I think this was a kind of a pretty easy one to break down, and I'll go right to the prop bets on this one. Serghei Spivac wins by TKO KO minus 140. Oleinik wins by submission plus 325. If you're Serghei Spivac, he should win this fight. He should win this fight against a 43-year-old heavyweight. But if he is going to lose, he has got to be careful. If this fight hits the ground, he's in top position, because if he's in top position and Aleksei Oleinik is on his back, you know what Aleksei Oleinik's going for.
Yeah, for sure. And, his Ezekiel choke is fantastic, and he's hunting it from all angles and all positions that are odd, whether he's on top position, bottom position, standing up. It's his go-to submission. But, against a sound grappler, usually that submission should not happen. It's more of a gi submission, but he has made adjustments to make it, successful within MMA. And he's got some of the most submission wins within the entire game. So I can't argue anything against that, but I can make up some points of, his age, his durability to this point, against a young fighter who seems to be like blossoming within the division. Serghei Spivac usually has the ground advantage or wrestling advantage over his opposition. I don't know if he'll have the jiu-jitsu advantage, but he's talented enough to avoid some positions. Now, this entire fight will depend on Serghei Spivac's just his will to maintain position rather than trying to go submission for submission against Aleksei Oleinik. You start doing that, you allow Oleinik to scramble, you allow Oleinik to capture a neck, an arm, what have you, and next thing you know, you're in a tough situation. But on the feet, Aleksei Oleinik makes too many mistakes. He's too wide with his shots. I think Serghei Spivac, despite being underwhelming at times, I think that he can capitalize on some mistakes. hurt him in the clinch, be strong enough to avoid some takedowns, maintain top position, get control time, end up winning some rounds. And I just, outside of like, a dart throw, I don't really like the matchup for Aleksei Oleinik. Obviously, the one thing that you can think of about Serghei Spivac is when he fought Misha Serkinov and he was controlled on the mat for some time. If Aleksei Oleinik's able to go and implement that game plan and take him down and just get on top and just trying to win rounds that way, it's definitely a path to victory. But it's Serghei Spivac for me, and I'm not really considering Oleinik for a lot of my lineups.
720 Red Dog checking in the YouTube chat saying, if Spivac doesn't win this fight, Father Time knows no end. Father Time catches up with everyone. Don't forget that. Father Time is real.
Yeah. It's real. And if you look back on Aleksei Oleinik's recent run, TKO lost to Chris Daukaus, got absolutely obliterated from Derek Lewis, won a split decision over Fabricio Verdum. We actually hit that fight correctly. And that was for Verdum coming off of, some USADA issues, possibly not really the most motivated, but going up against a guy who can nullify wrestling and get in better position, is not going to play guard off of his back like Serghei Spivac, should be able to go out there and win rounds against Aleksei Oleinik. So it's Spivac for me.
Yeah, I mean, to me, it's about playing Serghei Spivac. But look, if you're playing, a 20 entry or maybe even going 150, you sprinkle in Aleksei Oleinik just in case we see what we saw with Paul Craig last week. I mean, I think it's something you have to consider there. You look over the FanDuel side of the equation, $22 for Serghei Spivac. It's a high price. And if you're doing that, you definitely got to be hoping that he's going to get the victory there in the first round. Then we got a rematch that you mentioned a little earlier of Marlon Vera and Davey Grant. They fought all the way back in 2016. That's a long, long time ago. As now it's 5 years later, Marlon Vera, the 2-1 betting favorite in this one, plus 170 for Davey Grant. $9,100 for Marlon Vera on DraftKings, $21 on FanDuel. For Davey Grant, $7,108 over on FanDuel. This is, I will say this. First off, I thought it was kind of odd matchmaking in a way by the UFC. The fact that Chito Vera goes from fighting, potentially the greatest featherweight of all time, at least as we sit here now with Jose Aldo, to going down to fighting Davey Grant. Davey Grant has been on a nice little run here. But, this to me is, I'm all over Chito Vera in this situation.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like a lot of people will be targeting Davey Grant because he beat Marlon Vera once. And a lot of times in rematches, it does favor the person who is the victor in the first bout. But you always have to take into consideration how long from the first fight it was. It's some time, as you mentioned. And I do think that the development has been more in Marlon Vera's favor than it has been in Davey Grant. Yes, Davey Grant has had excellent performances where he lands strong punches, big left hooks, big looping shots. But I do think Marlon Vera is the side to play in this situation. But if you want a guy who can possibly break the slate by landing one shot, 7,100 Davey Grant might be your guy. But for me, I'm taking the safer approach. And I do think that Marlon Vera, is a decent play here. Since that loss, he's really fought a lot and has been really, really active. Has some wins over some tough competition. Brad Pickett, Brian Kelleher, Frankie Saenz, Andre Ewell, Sean O'Malley. Obviously, we saw that. Now, I will say that I think that Marlon Vera is a little overrated. I do think he is overrated. I think that a lot of people put too much stock in that O'Malley win. And yes, it was somewhat fluky, but I do think that he has the skills, whether it's stand-up, whether it's jiu-jitsu, wrestling. I think that he has enough skills now in 2021 to beat Davey Grant. I think that it's going to be a complete performance. I like him in this matchup. The price is affordable, $9,100. I feel like do I like Marlon Vera at $9,100 more than I like Serghei Spivac? That is the question. And I think it's a legitimate question. I don't know. I might like Marlon Vera just a tick more.
I feel like if you're prioritizing first round finish, I think you prioritize Serghei Spivac.
You think he gets rid of him?
Yeah.
He should, right? In all likelihood.
I think a Marlon Vera, if the stoppage victory comes, I think it comes in the second or third round.
I think that's fair. If we look at Marlon Vera at 9,100, he landed 2 takedowns against Song Yadong, 1 against Nolan Hernandez, 2 against Guido Canetti, 1 against Buren. So, I mean, like, takedown route is there. Control time is there. Submissions are always there. It's what path and what strategy is he going to implement in this fight. I just favor Marlon Vera in almost all the sequences here. Maybe inside in like a phone booth fighting, I would favor Davey Grant, but I'm excited to see the rematch for sure. But it's Marlon Vera for me.
Of course, we'll be talking about that more in depth, of course, on Live Before Lock on Saturday, as we'll get you ready for UFC Vegas number 29. Now, of course, if you are not a member of Awesemo Plus and want to become a member, we do have a special promo going on where you use a promo code MMA Strategy Show. And if you're a new user of Awesemo Plus Platinum, you got to take advantage of this deal where you get 25% off your first week of Awesemo Plus Platinum. All you got to do is use the promo code MMA Strategy Show for 25% off your first week of Awesemo Plus Platinum. But if you're only looking for a Awesemo MMA weekly pass, you can get that for $8.95. Stop guessing, start winning. Join Awesemo Plus today. Great deal we got going on there just for this show. Be sure to use that promo code MMA Strategy Show. Of course, give you access to ownership projections, player projections, that top fighter tool in terms of MMA. Take advantage of that. Of course, some other sports that we have, when it comes baseball, basketball, hockey, whatever it may be, one of those terms we use, boom bust. We're going to talk about our boom bust fighter a little later on in the show. Talked about that 2 weeks ago with Walt Harris, and I've pinpointed a fighter on this card that to me is my boom bust fighter on this one. We'll get to that fighter later on in the show. Next up is a matchup that I truly believe. I think we got to target this one in terms of GPPs, and that is Julian Erosa versus Seung Choi. Seung Choi, the betting favorite here, minus 155, plus 135 for Julian Erosa. 7,600 for Erosa on DraftKings, $12 on Fanduel, and for Choi, 8,600 on DraftKings, $19 on Fanduel. Julian Erosa has been on a nice little roll here, Pete. Obviously, there's always going to be the question marks with this chin. I will say that a prop bet I do like here is the under 2.5 rounds at plus 115. Of course, you can check out the betting lines over there at oddshopper.awesemo.com. But I truly do feel, I think this is a fight we have to prioritize this week because of the likelihood that it is going to end in a finish.
Yeah, this fight really screams GPP for me because you have Julian Erosa, who has so much momentum on his side, and his striking has looked good. It's always his striking defense that has kind of gotten him in trouble. But he has good grappling and good submission skills to kind of back up or, complement his striking if things get tough. We've seen it in the Sean Woodson fight where he started to resort to takedowns and eventually got a beautiful Darce choke. So I know that his submission game is always a threat. Now, he has 30-something fights, and he's facing off against Seung Choi, who, has 12 professional fights. So that's a big gap in competition and experience. Now, Seung Choi is a powerful fighter for the featherweight division, and he's usually pretty long. But let me say that Julian Erosa is pretty long as well. It's hard for me to really back one of these guys so confidently. Yes, you have a wide range of salaries. Seung Choi, 8,600. Julian Erosa, 7,600. So naturally, I will always have the underdog will always have a little bit more appeal to me in a close fight because I want to roster that fighter under the 8,000. That allows me roster flexibility to pay up for other people or get some of these studs that I want to prioritize. Julian Erosa's volume is also something that we need to take into consideration. High volume. So even if this goes the distance, you can see him landing 100 plus significant strikes. Juicy J, I mean, momentum's a real thing and has looked absolutely phenomenal in his previous 2 bouts that against 2 powerful strikers, right? Well, Sean Woodson, more of a volume guy with crisp boxing. Nate Landwehr, I thought was a matchup nightmare for him because he hit so hard and could expose, the chinniness of Julian Erosa. But I mean, Julian Erosa really went out there and put a halt to that pretty quickly by hopping on him early and landing a beautiful flying knee. So, whenever a guy has 30-something fights, not even including his Ultimate Fighter experience, I think you have to have exposure to him, especially when he's been on a roll. And of the 12 fights of Seung Choi, he has 3 defeats, whereas Julian Erosa is 25-9. So All in all, I am excited for this matchup. Initially, I did like Seung Choi, but after looking at the rest of the card and kind of I started to talk myself into Julian Erosa. So I will be leaning Julian Erosa, but I would agree with you that you need to prioritize this fight.
I'm gonna say it's Nick M here. He says, "How many jabs Juicy J gonna eat?" I mean, that's the one thing. I mean,
a lot.
Julian is a guy that I've got a great relationship with, but the one thing is this is a guy, he loves to strike, and he will he will eat a punch or two to land a punch or two.
Yeah. So right, like, who would you give the striking advantage to? I'd probably say that Seung Choi hits harder and Julian Erosa has the better volume and it was probably a little quicker, but who has the better grappling? If Julian Erosa is able to just, get Seung Choi thinking about, the striking and he starts to implement takedowns, that's his striking could open up his takedowns and his takedowns could open up his striking. So whenever you have that dual threat, I think that, the fight really favors you more than the other opponent.
For some reason, and I got to check on this, I believe Juicy J works out of 10th Planet there in Vegas.
Really?
I think so.
Well,
I want to say he works with Casey Hofstetter. I want to believe so.
Well, I mean, it would make sense because of how sneaky his jiu-jitsu is. I mean, he captures necks so well, but he does enjoy striking. But I think that he started to recognize, like, listen, if things get tricky, and he was outgunned against Sean Woodson from a volume aspect, and then he just said, all right, I'm going to test this guy's grappling, and he did so. So I'm excited to see this fight, and I will be prioritizing this fight one way or another. Seung Choi has KO power, so I wouldn't be surprised to see him knock out Juicy J either.
By the way, speaking of Sean Woodson, just had surgery on his hand, and we talked to him tomorrow. So nice. Look for that on my show coming up here. But yeah, he just we were supposed to talk last week, and then his appointment with his doctor came, and yeah, they did surgery earlier on this week on his hand. So big win for him there. But next up, we got another matchup that you look at. You think this is another fight we got to be prioritizing in terms of our GPPs. Wellington Turman plus 120 betting underdog taking on Bruno Silva. He is minus 140 over on DraftKings side of the equation. Bruno Silva, 8,800, 7,400 for Wellington Turman, and then 17 and 14 respectively over there on Fanduel. So Pete, why are you thinking this is a fight we got to be really considering here?
Yeah, I think it's a fight that we need to consider because of so many unknowns, and the unknowns really surround Bruno Silva, right? I mean, outside the UFC, finally gets a shot in the UFC, but leading up to it, he's had some spectacular performances over legitimate competition, big KO threat, especially over an M1. We've seen him across picking up some huge wins, knocking out Alexander Shlemenko, then Artem Frolov. I mean, the guy has, he has that death touch about him, and he's able to prevent some takedowns and then make his opponents pay. So he's a big guy, and he's a big guy, especially because he popped for PEDs. So now we're seeing him off a long layoff. His last fight was in November of 2018, where he captured a 4th round TKO over Artem Frolov. We're talking 2.5 years, right? And now coming into the UFC, you would think that he's off the PEDs and perhaps it's going to be affecting his performance. We always mention how PEDs can really just, you don't know how somebody's going to, recover from that. Is it more of a confidence thing, and that's why they got into it? Is it something that they've used throughout their entire career and they've always slipped through the cracks? Is he going to use it now? We don't know. That's something that we don't know, and that's one of the things we always talk about. But Wellington Turman did just get knocked out by Sanchez, and when he got knocked out by Sanchez, you're thinking of Andrew Sanchez as a guy who mixes in striking with some takedowns, not really a knockout threat. Yes, he does have some pop, but I don't know. I don't consider him a KO guy. And then he really flatlined them pretty bad. And, Wellington Turman has strong wrestling and grappling, not the most technical, but when he can get in there and make things ugly against a guy that could fatigue because of being off of PEDs or just being, just so muscle bound that, his cardio isn't really up to par. At 7,400, we always talk about how DraftKings, favors grapplers and favors wrestlers. So 7,400, Wellington Turman needs to be on your radar. absolutely needs to be on your radar because of the takedowns, the control time, the possibility of him working towards a finish of, maybe Bruno Silva can't hang off of his PEDs. But for me, 8,800, let's say everything's normal. I like Bruno Silva to knock out Wellington Turman, but this is a fight where I'll be smashing exposure.
Yeah, there is a fighter later on the card that I am looking in terms of the wrestling there. Of course, this is the also MMA strategy show. We are sponsored by Monkey Knife Fight. With Monkey Knife Fight, you are in charge with their player prop contest, and they have a instant first match deposit of up to $100 when you sign up by using the promo code Awesemo. As of course, it's one of the things I love to do is I look over there at Monkey Knife Fight and I'm looking at these more or less contests. And there are two fights I will tell you that I have really pinpointed this week. The first fight is the co-main event of Serghei Spivac and Aleksei Oleinik, more or less Pete Rogers Jr. Total strikes 56.5 for Serghei Spivac, 28.5 for Aleksei Oleinik.
It's interesting, man. It is interesting. 56.5.
See, to me, I and this is my thought is if you think this fight ends in the first round, I think you're looking at less 56.5 on Serghei Spivac. The 28.5 on Oleinik is interesting because of just potentially landing strikes on the mat. That's where it becomes interesting. I think if you think this is going to be a first round finish, I think this is a double less here.
I think I'd have to agree with you, especially when you kind of think of how a fight would go. Aleksei Oleinik is probably close to retirement, you would imagine, and his best shot at getting a victory is by implementing takedowns and trying to get the fight where he's most comfortable, and that's on the mat. So anytime that you understand it's going to be more of a grappling bout, you have to temper expectations for striking volume, obviously. And also you have to take it into consideration whether you think that this fight is going to be, finished or go the distance. If it goes the distance, then I think maybe those totals, it's going to be close. But I would agree with you that I think the double less is probably the way to go about that fight.
The other matchup that I'm looking at over at Monkey Knife Fight is Khaos Williams and Matthew Schmelzberger. Khaos Williams, 55.5, 36.5 on Matthew Schmelzberger. And I think this is another fight, and we'll get more into this when we get down to that matchup. It's got to be your thought process of how the fight is going to go. If you think this is going to be a Khaos Williams win in the first round, I think this is a double less situation. But if you think this fight is going to get, say, to the third round, I think it's a double more situation.
Yeah, so it's a great point. And I do think that this fight is going to go the distance. If it doesn't, then obviously you want to hit the double less. But I think if it goes the distance, I honestly don't know if Khaos Williams can keep up with Schmelzberger's volume. Schmelzberger at 36.5, you have to hammer the more on that. I think that he's going to absolutely exceed that. The Khaos Williams is a little tricky because in some of his decisions, he has landed around 50. So I probably would say less because I would imagine Schmelzberger would be looking to implement some takedowns to kind of keep the fight safe.
Mention Mr. Bubbles. I see you there with your question. We'll get to your question towards the end of the show. And Nick brings up a great point about Fanduel, about you got to be looking at takedown defense over there as well. We saw what happened with Bilal Muhammad, just stopping all those single leg takedown attempts. And I was actually listening to Bilal on the Anakin podcast, and he goes, look, he goes, that's all I prepared all camp was single leg. I just knew single legs are coming in, and he was able to get that. I was actually surprised his Fanduel score wasn't higher than what it was because of all the takedowns over there, but obviously pulled off a great score there. Let's move on to the next matchup on this card. That will be Matt Brown taking on Dhiego Lima. Matt Brown, the underdog in this one. He is plus 155, minus 175 for Dhiego Lima. And Matt Brown, 7,200 over on DraftKings for Dhiego Lima. It is $9,020 for Dhiego Lima over on FanDuel, $9 for Matt Brown. And you brought up a point when we were talking pre-show about Dhiego Lima of just the size that he does have at this weight class. This is obviously a much better matchup for Matt Brown as opposed to, when he was booked up there against Miguel Baeza. And look, we saw Matt Brown get off to a great start in that Miguel Baeza fight. But the one thing you're always worried about when it comes to Matt Brown, and you got to imagine that ATT Atlanta team has been hammering this point home throughout the preparation for this one, is aim for the body.
Yeah. My gosh. Yeah. He's a sucker for a body shot for sure. And, his toughness was always, put to the test throughout his career. And that's why he has so many victories within the UFC, and his strength of schedule and his resume speaks for itself. He's fought everybody, and he's had to overcome a lot of adversity within his career. Now, when you've built a career out of having to overcome adversity, it's very tough to do that at the tail end of your career, right? Because, your body's not as durable. You're not as sharp as you once were. You're not as fast as you once were. You don't hit as hard, and you've also been chin checked, knocked out, and cracked to the body more times than anybody. So, I understand why people will be hating on Dhiego Lima, because they always think that he's the lesser of the two brothers. And obviously he is, if you want to really put it in that perspective. He's not nearly as good as Douglas Lima. But I do think that there's a possibility that he's a late bloomer. Yes, he's had experience on The Ultimate Fighter, and this could be a fighter that's really starting to click, later on in his career rather than early on. And, we've seen him get hit with big shots and kind of cower away and run from a fight, so to speak. But we've also seen him make some adjustments and look, slightly reminiscent to his brother, where he starts to punish the leg, land some big shots. He's a big guy. So I do think that physicality will be there. And, if you look back on Matt Brown's previous performance against Carlos Condit, when he was out grappled and kind of just outgunned in that matchup, I don't see how Dhiego Lima, outside of getting hit with a big shot and finish, I don't see how he loses this fight. I do like Dhiego Lima quite a bit, and I'll probably like him more than the public. But I do understand why people would still be on Matt Brown, thinking that, the Immortal can go out there and just get in the head of Dhiego Lima, hit him hard, hit him early, and try to take him out there before he really gets, some momentum behind him. But it's Dhiego Lima for me, man, whether it's a TKO or possibly just an excellent performance over 15 minutes. I think that he will pay off that 9,000 price tag. And on a strange card like this week that I'm not too fond of, Jason, I do like Dhiego Lima a little bit. So I'll probably be over the field. And I think that's going to be somewhat contrarian. I think that people are naturally going to want to, play Matt Brown at 7,200.
I'll throw some darts on Matt Brown. I'll throw some darts to my 20 max. I mean, nothing crazy. I mean, literally 10, 15% Matt Brown, just kind of throw some darts.
I thought you were going to say 10, 15 of my 20 lineups. I'm like, bro, I mean,
no.
If you do that, right? Like last week, I had 80% McKinney. Remember that? And I was scrambling for the show, and it was just fantastic when he came through, because I shot up all of my lineups, no matter what happened. I was just killing it. But I obviously didn't have nearly enough Brandon Moreno, and especially when Jamal Hill kind of just goes out there and has that type of performance, it does set me back. But any night when you are over the field on a fighter that absolutely kills it, that's what, that's an aggressive way to play, but it definitely is amazing when you're on the right side of it.
Nick Ward mentioned in the chat earlier, right at the beginning of the show, he goes, who said Frevola was a lock last week? We had that in the chat last week.
Yeah, somebody said that, remember? Oh, boy. I'm just glad that we didn't say he was.
So it was funny because I was at my nephew's graduation party, and Pete, when you had service on your phone, you text me, and I was like, well, that's got to be good news.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was amazing. Did you end up seeing? It was just a nice little.
I'm actually talking to Terrence tomorrow.
Nice. There you go. Look at Jason Floyd, guys. If you guys are not tuning into Jason Floyd's, channel where he's just interviewing fighters, and this is how I met Jason. And show some support for Jason. Follow him on Twitter, and just see all the interviews, get some behind the scenes, get some extra insight that can help you for your DFS lineups. It's pretty awesome that our guy is a staple within the MMA community.
Yeah, well, if I can really talk about the author comments I have, that's where the good juicy stuff is. Yeah, I've got a trio of interviews that I'm doing tomorrow. But another comment we had was about speaking of Father Time, that kind of fight was not a great showing for Matt Brown, and look, it's for me, it's a dart throw. I understand where you're coming from, but my concern is at 9,000. if it's a 15-minute decision, how many takedowns do I potentially need for that price to pay off?
Yeah. I mean, I don't know if that's the game plan that's going to happen. I think he could go that route. I think that he could out grapple Matt Brown. I also think that he can outstrike Matt Brown, punish him on the feet, and just kind of, get him out of there. At 7,200, you're looking for a lucky shot. And whenever we're talking about, just throwing a dart or, you almost have to be okay with those lineups failing, because more often these underdogs or these fighters that are going extremely low owned, the probability of them coming through when the odds are stacked against them and all this and that, it's a real chance. It's a fist fight, but the probability is low. So if you are okay with being aggressive on some of these low probability spots, that's how you will actually shoot up the ladder, shoot up the rankings. And that's why we say MMA is the craziest sport in the world, because when you're on somebody that nobody else is on, that's how you really take down a GPP.
Yeah, that's why I always say when it comes to our ownership projections, I'm always looking at leverage spots. Who are the fighters underneath 20% ownership? Where can you take advantage? Of course, last week, Terrence McKinney was one of them. If you have Paul Craig, that was another one you're able to take advantage of. But of course, one of the things that Pete and I love to see after the fights are over is all of those screenshots of your winning lineups. And when you do finish in the top 3 of a contest of over 5,000 entries and you're rocking that Awesemo avatar on your DFS profile, you can get into the Awesemo Hall of Fame, where you tweet those wins at us at Awesemo HOF. You'll win a free month of Awesemo Plus Platinum. And some of our recent inductees into the Awesemo Hall of Fame, the real cons coming in first and second in NBA contests, winning over 6,500 in one contest and nearly $125 in another contest. Peter Hanley coming in first in 2 NBA Showdown contests, winning $6,000 in one of them and nearly $4,000 in another. Also, the Dust 1-2 coming in, chopping first place there, coming up with 2,700. And then Corey coming in first in an NBA Showdown. Single bullet. Love seeing those single bullets in those big GPPs. Of course, this time of year in NBA, you're going to be chopping with a ton of people there, as he won $2,000. So congratulations to him. And of course, be sure to tweet those wins at Awesemo Hall of Fame. And of course, note that only one free month can be awarded to a user per calendar year. Next up, we got Aleksei versus Nicolae here. Aleksei is your betting favorite at -245. Nicolae plus 205, 9,300 for Aleksei over on DraftKings, $23 over on Fanduel. Nicolae, 6,900 on DraftKings, $8 over on Fanduel. So, any thoughts of potentially going with the value play here?
Gosh, this is such an ugly fight. And, you talk about the ultimate dart throw would be Negumereanu. Because when he debuted against Saparbeg Safarov, that's one of the worst fighters in the UFC, and he just did not look good at all. And then you dive into his career and you really examine it. His strength of schedule is one of the most questionable I think we've ever seen within the cage. He has a lot of finishes on the mat, Bravo chokes, rear naked chokes, some slams and punches and armbar. So he's well-versed on the mat, but he's taking out people that are extremely mismatched in the fights. And now we're talking about taking on a guy in Aleksei Camur, who is a main training partner for Stipe Miocic, a main sparring partner. I do think that Aleksei Camur is kind of overhyped to a point. And I think that now his stock has come back to earth a little bit after losing against William Knight. And I think that I talk about it every week with you guys, that recency bias is a real thing. So when somebody's coming off a loss, people always want to investigate and look at the other guy as a potential flyer. Now they're both coming off of losses, but I do think that everything really favors Aleksei Camur. I understand that he didn't look good in the grappling and wrestling exchanges against William Knight, but I can say from Connecticut, I've seen William Knight fight plenty of times, and he is one of the most explosive and strong fighters out there within the division that can really implement takedowns and control you on the mat. So I don't really think of it so negatively of Aleksei Camur. Yes, I think that he had a lot of hype, and that some of that has been derailed, but I do think on the feet he can pick apart Nick, and I do think that even on the mat he can get out of some bad positions. So I think that he's the guy. I think that he's the A side of the fight. Clearly, the odds agree with me, and I can't really put my money on Negumereanu rather than I'd say 5% of lineups just because, but expect those 5% of lineups to not really come through.
Yeah, it's not a fight that I foresee myself having a ton of exposure to, and part of that is comes to the price of Aleksei being at 9,300. Next up, we got Murata and Jandiroba. And I just mentioned Miles checking in the chat, asking about who's going down Takedown City, and I have got a candidate who has the potential, but I am worried if she does go the takedown route of potentially getting submitted, and that is Murata. She's plus 115, 7,800 over on DraftKings, but her path to victory is using her wrestling, but I am concerned about her potentially getting submitted on the ground here by Jandiroba.
Yeah, legitimate concerns, and they're valid because I do think that Kanako Murata, when she debuted against Rana Marcos, you think Rana Marcos is a decent striker, decent grappler, tends to get outworked on the mat and potentially submitted. So when she's paired up against an accomplished and accredited wrestler like Kanako Murata, you think Murata would absolutely explode, that she would really put on a showing. And she did. But as for DFS, it doesn't really translate into the best score. She landed 4 takedowns, 9 minutes of control time. And when we really look at it, it's okay. She didn't do horrible. She did great in that fight, but scoring 88 points. Okay. Let's say she scores 88 points in a fight against, Virna Jandiroba, who is absolutely more dangerous than Rana Marcos on the mat. So she's going to have to be on her P's and Q's and be very, very careful because she cannot get, caught in a submission. She can't leave her arm out there. She can't leave her neck out there on a double. I think that Kanako Murata could go slightly over-owned, but there is potential there. We always talk about how jiu-jitsu fighters sometimes struggle against wrestlers who have good top position because they're on their back, losing rounds, playing from guard, trying to attempt submissions when the top fighter from top position is, maintaining control time, landing ground and pound strikes. I do think that Kanako Murata being a part of CSA is a great development for her career. I think that she's going to turn into a very, very solid striker. She is solid now, and that's how she's going to round out her game. This is a fight that you and I kind of went back and forth on, and we're like, outside of a Jandiroba submission, I don't really know if I like this fight because they could nullify each other and they can both be somewhat hesitant because Jandiroba is going to not be hesitant because she has the confidence in her jiu-jitsu. But I think Kanako Murata could be hesitant about landing takedowns or staying down there when somebody's so dangerous off their back.
Yeah, just peeked our ownership. I was actually the ownership a little higher than I expected in terms of this matchup. I thought it'd be a little lower, potentially maybe a leverage spot here. But to me, if you're looking, I would say this. I think I prefer Murata as a cash game play as opposed to a GPP. Just kind of a lot of what you just said there. You look at those 4 takedowns and only getting 88 points in her last fight. That's definitely something to stick out there. Of course, we mentioned about the monkey knife fight line for Khaos Williams and Matthew Schmelsberger. Khaos Williams a minus 155 betting favorite in this one. Matthew Schmelsberger plus 135. I do like the prop of Khaos Williams wins in round 1 plus 275 because, I think if Khaos Williams is going to win, it's going to come in the first round. But you bring up some great points about Matthew Schmelsberger. And to me, my boom bust fighter this week is Khaos Williams because if he goes out there and wins, it's likely a first round knockout. It's going to be a massive score. He's probably going to be optimal even at 8,900. But if he loses, it's just going to be a really low score.
Yeah, so it's a matter of how much stock do we put in the KO wins over Abdul Razak Al Hassan? It's tough to say because outside the UFC, Khaos Williams wasn't like some of this. He had a lot of fights as an amateur, some decent amount of fights as a pro, but he wasn't like finishing everybody. And then he comes into the UFC and he knocks out Alex Morona in 27 seconds and then Al Hassan in 30 seconds. So obviously his stock is so high. Pair him against Michelle Pereira, who is extremely difficult to deal with. And it turns out to be an underwhelming affair of being a little gun shy. Now, against a guy in Schmelsberger, I think that this is an interesting matchup. and it's pretty even because Semelsberger is 8-2. You have Khaos Williams as 11-2. You are, completely correct by saying Khaos Williams is the ultimate GPP play, the boom bust guy that could get you that Francis Ngannou bonus, could get you that quick knockout within the first round, get us over 100 points pretty easily. 129 against Morono, 127 against Al Hassan. The potential is there. But what happens if his opponent is so tough and durable and can take a shot and also give a shot and mix in some takedowns? And that's the dilemma he has here against Matt Semelsberger. Yes, 3 years ago, 2.5 years ago, we did see Semelsberger get knocked out by a guy named Jerome Featherstone. But inside the cage, we have seen him put Jason Witt's lights out with a hard right hand. We did see a complete performance with high volume against Carlton Minus. So I do think that the GPP potential play is clearly Khaos Williams. The cash play is Matt Semelsberger. But I do feel like Semelsberger is a safer play because of his well-rounded skill set. And I am slightly favoring Matt Semelsberger. And that's something I didn't really expect heading into this week. It's just the skill set, the grappling, patching some holes, and maybe just, exploiting Khaos Williams in, incomplete game, so to speak. But I'm excited for the matchup. This is a fight I will be prioritizing. We talked about the other fights I will be prioritizing. This might be my third favorite on the card, and I'll have plenty of both sides.
Yeah, to me, it's definitely a fight that you got to have in your GPP lineups, and ownership is showing that people are prioritizing this matchup. Of course, be sure to follow Awesemo on social media. And if you're looking to score a free Awesemo Plus pass or just want to stay up to date on DFS news and Awesemo offerings, make sure to follow all the Awesemo social media channels on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook, and join our Awesemo fans Facebook group as well, as we run exclusive giveaways for each platform. So maximize your chances of winning by following each one. You gotta be, our guy news guy always helping us out with those lineups of who's in, who's out, always give you that latest DFS news that you need to help with your lineups. Samuel, appreciate you in the super chat. We will get to your questions at the end show. I promise this week I will get to your super chat. I forgot last week, answered it in the comment section. So look, you always notice, go to those comment section after the show's over. Me and Peter are in there. So if there's something that maybe you want to have a question for us after the show, you can hop right in those comment sections. We do answer your questions as well there. Let's move on, as we got 3 more matchups here left on the show. We got a heavyweight matchup of Josh Parisian take on Roque Martinez. Josh Parisian, a -140 betting favorite, +120 for Roque Martinez, 8,700 for Josh Parisian, 7,500 for Roque Martinez, 18 and 13 respectively. Pete, this has got 15-minute decision written all over it.
You said that, and you mentioned it to me before the show. Could this be a sneaky fight because everybody's kind of on the same page, or we all think it's going to be a sloppy heavyweight affair?
Look, I think if you're looking for a leverage spot, Roque Martinez is the guy you target in this matchup.
Okay, exactly. That was kind of where I was, steering you in that direction. I do think that this is an interesting fight for sure. It's a heavyweight fight. Typically, we like to prioritize heavyweight fights, but we also like to, put our finger on certain heavyweight fights that could be a stinker and could go 15 minutes of them leaning on each other, having occasional moments of, striking, and then a lot of fatigue will set in. Now, the fatigue is a big issue as far as Josh Parisian is considered. I do worry about his gas tank. I do think that Roque Martinez, despite being undersized for the division, I think that his volume and his cardio will be slightly, not his volume, his durability, I guess I would mention. Like, he's fought some legitimate competition over his career. And if you really kind of go into Josh Parisian's career, he's had some inconsistent moments, and he has captured some excellent wins, some wins that really caught me by surprise, but he has some surprising defeats as well. I don't know how to go about this fight, and I'm always transparent about fights I'm struggling with. This is one I'm struggling with a little bit. I think I will naturally side with Parisian if he can, out volume Roque Martinez and kind of win 2 of the 3 rounds. I do worry about him falling off a cliff as far as cardio is considered. But as far as DFS, right? If I'm looking 8,700 Parisian, Roque Martinez 7,500, Parisian really did not look good against Parker Porter. He didn't look good in that fight. He threw a lot, but he did not look good. Roque Martinez probably won't be able to keep up with the volume, but maybe he can capitalize on a fatigue Parisian. But with all that being said, I hate this matchup. I'll probably avoid it for most of my lineups. But if I have to pick somebody, I guess I'll lean with Parisian in the matchup.
Yeah, it's just not a fight that I love just because I do think it's going to go 15 minutes.
Right.
But look, I think Roque Martinez could potentially be that leverage play of the week just based on what we're seeing in terms of ownership. 2 more fights here to go. Of course, if you're not subscribed also right here on YouTube, be sure to do that. Hit the thumbs up button. That really does help us out a lot as well. We got great programming for you each and every day. So keep it locked here to Awesemo for all of your NBA, MLB, NHL, MMA, NASCAR. We got you covered. Soccer coverage. We've got you everything over here at Awesemo.com. Next up, we got Joaquin Silva, a minus 130 betting favorite, taking on Ricky Glenn, who plus 110, moving up to the 155-pound division here. 8,300 for Silva. Glenn, 7,900. $16 for Silva on Fanduel, $15 for Glenn. I guess the first thought for me with Rick Glenn is obviously moving up to 155. How's he going to kind of fit in with this division in terms of size? For Joaquin Silva, if you're going to be a Joaquin Silva backer here, Pete, obviously you're thinking he's going to get the job done here early because you do kind of concern potentially could he fade if this fight gets into late second, third round.
Yeah, I think the cardio is definitely in Ricky Glenn's favor. I think that his salary is appealing at 7,900, just, especially because he has 27 fights to Joaquin Silva's 14. I'm interested because he's an underdog, but I do recognize the tough test set ahead against Joaquin Silva, who is extremely dangerous on the feet, throws with, excellent power, good shots, has actually picked up some decent wins. Obviously looking to rebound from that Nasrat Haqparast defeat where he was laid out, but that was Nasrat Haqparast. I can't really hold that against him too much. Ricky Glenn, to a point, I don't know if he still has like room to grow within the division or within the sport. He has so many fights throughout his career, and I do wonder if it's kind of, the best days of Ricky Glenn are kind of done. I do think that Joaquin Silva is one of the best GPP plays on the entire slate because of how hard he hits and how aggressive he is. He can pick up, knockouts in the first round, third round, second round. I mean, even in the third round against Jared Gordon, he picked up 94 points because he threw at a high clip, 121 total strikes, got a takedown in a third round knockout. That was actually really, really brutal. First round knockout over Holbrook, he scored 127. So I do think that Joaquin Silva can break the slate. But with all that being said, Ricky Glenn's volume and sneaky volume, especially if you look back on that Gavin Tucker fight where he threw 184 total strikes, landed 4 takedowns. He's going to be shooting a lot in this matchup. And I do wonder how he is a weight class up. If he can land any takedowns, yes, he'll maybe feel fresher, but is he at a strength disadvantage? What happens when he gets hit from a 155er? We'll have to see how this all goes. But I wish I liked Ricky Glenn more than I actually do. I'm going to favor Joaquin Silva at 8,300. I think it's affordable. It's an excellent GPP, piece for your lineups.
Then the opening matchup is a female matchup. You got Casey taking on Laura. Casey a plus 140 betting underdog, minus 160 for Laura on the other side. Laura 8,500 on DK, 7,700 for Casey. What is your take on this one, Pete?
Oh, this fight, Jason. First fight in the night. Volatility is extreme, and it always is, right? Each week, we always talk about how volatile the first fight in the night is and how it ruins a lot of your lineups, especially if you take an aggressive stance on it. So I do think that we have to temper some expectations here for Casey O'Neill. Yes, box score watchers will be looking at Casey O'Neill saying, wow, she scored 139.6 points in her first fight against Shayna Dobson. She's only priced at 7,700, and she's fighting a fighter in Lara Procopio who scores 88.9 fantasy points per fight and is priced pretty expensive at 8,500. Heck, I'm going to take a shot on Casey O'Neill, and I can't really fault him or hate on him because the wrestling and the cardio seems to be there. Obviously, she has some questionable strength of schedule to this point, but you don't know how talented a fighter is until they're matched up against an equal opponent, right? Like, yes, we know that maybe she hasn't fought tough competition, but eventually she's going to have to. She's going to have to face some tough competition, and this could be the fight. Lara Procopio, I think, will be a common pick because she's big. She is a black belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. The submission is there to threaten Casey O'Neill, and Procopio did, lose a split decision over a fighter that a lot of people have and hold in high regard in Karol Rosa. And I actually think that Karol Rosa is pretty damn talented for the division, but on the feet, she's talented. She threw 169 strikes in that fight against Karol Rosa. That fight was primarily on the feet. In the fight against Molly McCann, she resorted to 7 takedowns. But the one key factor that we really don't know is how does she handle defending takedown after takedown after takedown from Casey O'Neill? Because McCann shot some takedowns and they were defended. They weren't really counted on the stats, but I watched the fight and, she has some good awareness and some good technical skills to avoid takedowns. But against a wrestler and against somebody that could push the pace like Casey O'Neill can, I'm curious. That's all I'm going to say. I'm curious. I can't ignore Casey O'Neill. I will favor Procopio because of the strength of schedule, the 2 fights that she has, Molly McCann and Karol Rosa, both 2 talented fighters. If Casey O'Neill runs through Procopio, absolutely the real deal. She's already regarding herself as a top 5 fighter for the division or something crazy like that, but she has to prove a little bit more before I'm really backing her to a high extent or high degree. But man, Procopio for me with some exposure to Casey O'Neill.
Of course, before we get into listener questions to wrap up this edition of the Awesome MMA Strategy Show, let's give our straight up fight picks. These are not DFS related, so let's see how many differences Pete and I have here.
Oh boy.
Chan Sung Jung versus Dan Ige.
I'm just going to say that we're going to have so many differences because I absolutely hate this card, but I'm going Chan Sung Jung. Give me the Korean Zombie.
Give me Dan Ige.
Here we go.
As a favorite here.
I'm
pretty sure we're going to agree on the go main event. I'm pretty sure we both have Serghei Spivac.
Spivac for me.
Marlon Vera, Davey Grant. Give me Marlon Vera.
Marlon Vera.
All right, let's see if we're on the same page here. I think we may be. Julian Erosa versus Seung Woo Choi.
Hurts me to say because I'm scared, but I'll say Julian Erosa.
I thought we'd agree there. I would go Julian Erosa as well. Wellington Turman versus Bruno Silva.
Silva.
I will go Silva as well. Dhiego Lima versus Matt Brown.
Dhiego Lima.
I wanted to take Matt Brown. You've talked me in Dhiego Lima.
Yeah, bro.
Aleksei versus Nicolae. I will take Aleksei.
Yeah, Alexa Camur.
Give me the underdog in Murata against Jandiroba because of the wrestling.
Let me just because to be different, I will say Jandiroba.
All right. Khaos Williams, Matthew Schmelsberger. I think we're going to disagree here. Give me Khaos Williams to win by knockout in the first round.
Wow. Okay. Yeah, give me Schmelsberger.
Josh Parisian, Roque Martinez.
God.
I know. I'm with you there. I'll go Josh Parisian. I'll go first here.
Non DFS. Let me root for Roque Martinez.
All right. Joaquim Silva, Ricky Glenn. I will go Joaquim Silva.
Yeah, Joaquim Silva.
And I will take Laura in the opening fight.
Yeah, give me Laura Procopio. Man, it is such an ugly card, right? Like, I feel like we're back in the COVID era where people like this is like March of 2020 when people were falling off left and right and we were just left with fights. That's kind of what it feels like. But last week was a treat.
You can tell they don't have to sell tickets.
Yeah. Very true. Yeah, that's true.
Let's get into the questions here to wrap up this edition of the Strategy Show. Let's start off with Samuel there in the super chat. He's got his usual questions. So that's top 2 cash, top 2 GPP, underdog champions, favorite inside distance, overlooked fighter, upset of the night. So let's talk top 2 cash in terms of this one. I will say Serghei Spivac.
Yep.
And my second for cash would probably be Marlon Vera.
Yeah, I don't hate either one of them. I will say Serghei Spivac and give me the Korean Zombie.
Top 2 GPPs. This is really interesting because there's some fights I'm targeting in terms of GPPs.
Right.
I would probably say Serghei Spivac would be up there as a part of a GPP just because of thinking of terms of a stoppage coming there.
Damn.
to label a second one in terms of GPP that I'm really confident in, it's tough because like I look at my GPP plays and I'm saying, okay, I want to throw some darts on Erosa. I like him in that spot. Khaos Williams, but he's the ultimate boom bust fighter on this card. Joaquin Silva is another one. I want to have some, but man, it's tough to like say like that's my clear number 2.
Yeah, this is a very, very difficult week. I will say that when I clicked on Serghei Spivac's name, the scoring totals absolutely blew my mind. He scored 132 points against Jared Vandera, 101 against Felipe, and 120 against Tai Tuivasa. That might be your guy as far as like GPP. You might be absolutely correct on that. Now, the second one is probably the most difficult thing to kind of fathom. I think for GPP, right, just based on potential, I think I'd have to look at a guy like Joaquin Silva. Even though I know Rick Glenn hasn't been knocked out, it doesn't mean that it can't happen.
Top underdog of the week. There's a couple of, I mean, I think you have to look right at the top of Seung Jung as even though in terms of DraftKings, he's a quote unquote fair, but as we sit here right now, he is the betting underdog. I think you mentioned about Wellington Turman because of the takedown abilities. Julian Erosa is someone that we have mentioned. Murata because of her ability to take the fight to the ground. Schmelsberger, you labeled out, potentially, taking out the gas in Khaos Williams in that early storm. So there's a lot of options there for underdogs.
Yeah, there's a lot of options. And on a card like this, when there's 12 fights, you have to get different. And I think getting at least 2 underdogs is how you will have, the correct build. I actually can see a week like this week where we actually see 3 people come through for us. I think it's a tie for me between Julian Erosa and Matt Semelsberger. I think that the upside is similar. I think that the upside for an Erosa finish is a lot higher than a Semelsberger finish. So maybe Erosa's finishing ability slightly edges Semelsberger, but Semelsberger's takedowns can make this fight extremely interesting, especially if he gets Khaos Williams outside of round 1.
In terms of MVP champion, let me look. I think Seung Jung makes a lot of sense there. Potentially him to defend takedown tests. I'm going to give you a very under the radar MVP play.
Let me hear it, brother.
Dhiego Lima.
That's my guy. What the heck you mean under the radar? That's my guy.
Go look at ownership projections, bro. You'll see why I'm saying under the radar.
Really? Pete, no,
really low.
Everybody hates my boy. I like him, and I like him from a personal perspective. And I understand why people are critical of him because of the up and downs throughout his career and how he's been inconsistent. And, he's made it to the Ultimate Fighter, and then he looked great on the show. And then the finale, he's dropped the ball. I just think that I like him. I think he's a late bloomer.
Favorite inside the distance to me is a co-main event.
Really? Huh. Let me see.
If that fight goes 15 minutes, that is going to be a very sloppy heavyweight fight.
Yeah. I might say my favorite or one of my favorite inside the distance would probably be the Dhiego Lima Matt Brown. I think that the durability of Matt Brown's in question. And I also think you can kind of point the finger at Dhiego Lima and say, I don't trust him to take a shot.
Yeah. Overlooked fighter.
Heck, I wish we knew.
It's a tough one. I mean,
I say Wellington Turman.
Yeah, that's a good one. Upset of the night.
What are we considering upset?
Schmelsberger plus 135. He's got to wear that.
What's Erosa at?
He's plus 135. There's not a lot of. I mean, here's your big underdogs: Aleksei Oleinik plus 185, Davey Grant plus 170, Nicolae plus 205.
What about Turman? How big is he?
Plus 120.
Wow.
You don't have big betting odds this week,
right? All these odds. Vegas is as confused as we are with this entire slate, right? And I think that this is a perfect slate for people to take advantage of this by including maybe more underdogs than normal, or actually maybe not including, but considering more underdogs than normal, because there's only 12 fights. You're going to have to get different no matter what. You know what chalky lineups will be. And the odds are decently close on a lot of these bouts.
Yeah. I'll pair these questions together. Mr. Bubbles asked, he goes, how many fights will end inside the distance? And also Nick saying over under 5.5 fights inside the distance.
I was
use that 5.5. I'll go over.
I was just going to ask you 5.5. That's a perfect number. I'm saying under.
Really? Wow. Okay.
I mean, okay. Who's finishing?
You tend to be right on these ones. I'll tell you, I tend to get these ones wrong. So
who's finishing who?
All right. I think main event goes the distance.
Okay.
Co-main event, I think you got a good probability that ends in a stoppage.
Okay.
Vera Grant,
I bet you that goes the distance.
I think it's kind of 50. I think it's 50-50.
All right, let's give it to you. Call it if it gets finished.
Erosa, Choi, I say yes, that's a finish.
Okay.
Turman, Silva. Tough to say.
Jason's
Lima, I think is a stoppage.
Jason's expecting a 700-point lineup. Watch it be a 700-point lineup. We'll have to see.
Or look, the days of the trying to get the 600 over, Pete.
It's true.
You're now trying to get to 700 every week.
That is true. Yeah. It could be a
remember we would do these shows going, oh, it's a race 600. It's no longer a race. You getting to 600 means like you're like in 100th place.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that with how many fights you're expecting to be finished, we could be looking at an abnormally high number.
Yeah, I mean, it's a lot of close fights, in terms of that one. Let's get some other questions. Top 2 8,600 over GPP plays on DraftKings.
Top 2 over 82?
Over 86.
Oh, 86. Top 2 over 86. Well, I hate to say it, but I guess I'll go Bruno Silva and Serghei Spivac just to give you a mid and a high.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I'd probably say Spivac. Ugh.
I'm really not confident that he can get rid of Oleinik.
I don't think Oleinik's got the gas tank for 15 minutes. I think that's the biggest problem there.
That's true. He lays upside down with his feet on the mat.
Yeah.
And some commissions are going to wave it off thinking he had a heart attack. Tell me if this is in my hometown, tell me the commissioner is not freaking out worried about the athlete safety. Let's be real. Exactly.
No comment.
Yeah, exactly.
Favorite salary saver on the slate coming from Nick.
Favorite salary saver. Who we liking, guys?
Is it gotta be Schmelsberger 7,300?
It's gotta be Schmelsberger.
I mean, look, as I said there, Khaos Williams to me is the boom bust fighter on this slate. I mentioned 2 weeks ago is Walt Harris. To me, this one it's Khaos Williams because if he's winning, it's a knockout in the first round.
Yeah, 100%.
Of course, we will be here on Saturday for Live Before Lock. Of course, Lock this week is at 4 p.m. Eastern time, so we'll be here on early Saturday afternoon. I believe we're on at 3 p.m. Eastern time. I believe so. I haven't honestly looked at the schedule, so I'm as I see what Tyler's saying. So, but I believe we're on at 3 p.m. Eastern time. If not, I'll have it on my Twitter profile at Jason_Floyd.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, thanks for joining us tonight, guys. Like I say, every Saturday, come hang out with us. Come engage in chat. If you can't hang out on Saturday, leave a comment on this video. Let us know how much you like the show, about your lineups last week, about some hot takes for this week. just ask us anything you want. We really appreciate you guys. As you head out, if you can just hit that thumbs up, get us over 100 likes, we'd really appreciate you. And looking forward to Saturday, Jason. You know, sometimes these cards really, you know, surprise us and absolutely come through, and we're like sitting there saying, wow. And Dana White ends up looking like a genius more often than not.
That's why I'm thinking over 5.5 on Fight Saturday and the stoppage.
I hope so.
And then, you know, hopefully it's not the race 800.
Yeah,
you know?
right.
But that is going to do it for the Strategy Show. Of course, be sure to check out our sponsor, Monkey Knife Fight. They've got instant first match deposit of up to $100. All you got to do is use that promo code AWESEMO. Of course, we'll be here on Saturday. Of course, keep it locked here to AWESEMO all day long. Of course, tomorrow they'll have all get you ready for the MLB and NBA slate of action. So that's going to do it for this edition of the Also MMA Strategy Show. We will talk to you on Saturday for Live Before Lock. Good night, everybody.